In this session, we'll look at the classroom as a global community. As we think about the global classroom, we think, first of all, a globalization. And what is it? Well, what it is it's integration. It's what I do affects others around me. So we're all intertwined. It's not new, and it's not just about economics or business, doing international business, but it is how web technology has been able to integrate all facets of the really the planet. With just internet connectivity, we can be connected with others in various ways, both synchronously and asynchronously in virtual environments. It's also an ongoing process, continues to be defined and developed, and it shows our interdependence. Nothing's more true about that than the financial industry, correct? I think we all can identify and relate to how that has influenced and showed how globalization affects everyone around the world. And so, and it's not Americanization or colonialism. It's definitely not that. That's not what globalization means. It's how we are interdependent and can work together and need what happens in other parts of the world does affect us. I wanted to draw your attention again. I know we've referred to Piaget quite a bit through your program, but Piaget's stage theory of development, and look at it from an intercultural perspective. From the pre-operational stage, 2 to 7, we see that children begin to internalize representations of the world around them. They're incapable of cooperative play and really not able to take the perspective of another person. It's me, mine, I, very egocentric. The concrete operational stage, though, from ages 8 to 12, we see that children are able to comprehend the point of view of someone else. Their attitude is a little bit more flexible, working with others. Rapid cognitive development happens during this stage. And as a result, this is a critical time for developing an intercultural perspective. So for those of you school teachers, those of you that work with children in this age group, realize this is a real good opportunity for you to capitalize on intercultural education for this age group. Here we'll look at 4 levels of cross-cultural awareness. We'll look at these different levels. Level 1 involves awareness of visible cultural traits. That's your skin color, your dress, language patterns, and ceremonies. Level 2 involves becoming aware of superficial or extremely visible cultural traits that contrast markedly with one's own culture that they come out of. Level 3, it's similar to level 2, but this level is characterized by more intellectual emphasis and analysis. And level 4 involves awareness of how another culture feels from the perspective of an insider. So really going to the highest level. So think of level 1 as the lowest, level 2 progressing up the ladder to level 4, where there's the highest level of awareness of cross-cultural interaction and sensitivity and development. So how can we develop cross-cultural awareness of teachers and trainers? Well, in the classroom or in an online classroom, correct? You could do this with social studies curricula that are geared to intercultural or global situations and the effects that those are having. Reading intercultural books, interactive technology to communicate with others globally. A lot of classrooms are doing that already. And some of you may even have students in your classes from different cultures if you're doing online courses, for example, or even face-to-face may have good representation depending on where you live. Reflect on national and world conditions in your classes when you have opportunity and bring those to light. How, for example, we work, for example, in higher education, how we work in higher education in a global society, how things in other countries, in other areas of the world are affecting how we're doing our education practices here in the U.S. and vice versa. Maybe even developing some partnerships and going on trips, going and doing things, learning, doing exchange, backwards and back and forth to a culture. Maybe even adopting a different culture, or partnering with another school in another part of the world, and doing projects together through the internet and through the technology that's available. When we think of international competence, working in different cultures, first we look at the characteristics of international competence in students. Knowledge of the world and historical experiences of other people. These are characteristics. Can your students, can those that you're working with understand, appreciate? We realize that, and we hear all the time of people in Europe, in schools there know 4 or 5 different languages. English is required, whether that's their native language or not. And we can barely get kids to do a second language in junior high and high school. And so their world in historical experiences and knowledge of the world is probably much more to a higher level degree than most of ours in the West. Sufficient cross-cultural skills to communicate with people from around the world. And once again, this is experiences. And how much time do kids in our culture have with those from a different culture, and are they able to interact? Do they have opportunity to do that so that they can learn to communicate? About inclusive ethical citizenship and social action. The world together, working in a global society and doing some things together, even some projects. Like I said on the last slide, to maybe even partner with a school in another part of the world and maybe even take on a project together. And active in building connections with others. And this can be done, like I said, through the internet, through technology, maybe networking at a conference, international conference or something like that, where you're with others from different cultures. So these are all good things for helping to develop international, really more or less I should say, characteristics of international competence in students. And on the next slide we'll look at how educators facilitate the development of international competence with students. All right, as we continue our discussion from the last slide, we'll look here at how can educators facilitate international competence with their students. Well, you can teach about different global belief systems, how worldviews are different around the world, some examples, maybe even some video clips or just discussion, maybe even reading stories, newspaper clippings, things like that, of why people do things the way they do in different cultures, something that's different from the culture that you're working in. Teach human rights and social justice. Educators can also facilitate this development by teaching about different political systems, parliamentary systems, our system of government, dictatorships around the world, and why different countries interact the way they do with different countries based on alliances and things like that, and some of the history that's gone into all of those systems and formulations, United Nations as well, and the forming of that can be very effective to help educators facilitate international competence with their students, and then also familiarize students with human commonality, and that all humans deserve dignity and to be treated fairly and with respect. Here we'll look at the aspects of a global classroom. First aspect would be the development of cross-cultural awareness in students. And once again, this has to be very intentional and focused. Learner-centered education. For working with adults, this could be the andragogical learning model, where you allow the adults in your class or your intercultural education courses you're teaching to experiment for themselves and go out and to form their own learning model that they would like to address, something that they may be very interested in, They may be interested in a particular culture or a particular worldview, allowing them to look at things from different perspectives based on their interest. You can allow this for students as well, depending on if they have a particular interest in a language or culture around the world. Utilization of technology to access the global community. This is very representative of a global classroom, so that you actually have the tools and equipment for your students to be able to get access to the global community, to interact with those, even in a live environment from around the world, depending on time zones and things like that. Emphasis on the skills needed to succeed in the workforce as well is a really good characteristic or aspect of a global classroom. So not just within the immediate context, but then what do you need to function and to be operational and effective in the world and to make a contribution. And then also talked a little bit about this, about collaborative or intercultural competence. Working together with those from different cultures is really a good aspect of the global classroom, and things that we can actually see happening, see come to fruition with the availability of all the technology and availability of the internet. Obviously, we think of technology in the global classroom. We think of computers, and on the computer, you've got things like YouTube and voice threads, Google Docs, Google Plus Hangouts, the Dropbox, Evernote, mobile devices and apps. We see kids just going crazy on iPads and things like that in schools, and how their interest is just piqued by these mobile devices and the apps that are available on them. As well, using social media sites, just careful on that. But if they're used in a correct way, it can be very effective. Tablet devices of all sorts, not just the iPad, but the smartphones as well. And we realize that lots of students have those, both adults and children. So, but having these tools available helps us to build that collaborative learning environment with those of our colleagues around the world, and helps to inform us and to be better informed about intercultural aspects and sensitivity, as well as being able to work and to make a contribution even in a more effective way for others around the world, and really realize how much we actually do have in the West and how spoiled we really are. And so just having all these things available can really help build the global classroom. And most of these, like I said, are free, at least to the user, and can really be useful as you work with your students, both adults and children, if that's your situation.